my wife and my daughter, they left on 25th of December to come back in 2 weeks. And nobody on earth could have imagined that the government could sink so low to shoot the children over the skies of Tehran. I don't have any trust in Iranian government. They are not a normal player in a game of diplomacy. They have a long history of supporting terrorism, hostage taking, and murder. But we trust government of Canada to pursue this way for us to seek justice one day.
It has been nearly 1 year since Flight 752 was shot down by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. 176 people were killed, including 55 Canadian citizens, 30 permanent residents, and 53 others who were on their way to Canada. Today, the Prime Minister's special advisor on the downing of that plane issued a report saying Iran should not be left in charge of the investigation. Ralph Goodale found, quote, the party responsible for the situation is investigating itself largely in secret. That does not inspire confidence or trust. The Canadian government says it's pushing for accountability, but given Iran's actions to date, is true accountability possible? Earlier today, I sat down with Minister of Foreign Affairs François-Philippe Champagne to ask just that. Here's part of that conversation. Minister, thank you very much for making the time. I appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you at Global Affairs for a change.
It's nice to get out of the building, I'll tell
exactly.
you. Minister, I do want to start on Iran and the report that Mr. Goodale released today. You have said on more than one occasion that Canada will hold Iran to account. What
Indeed.
Specifically do you mean by that?
Well, you know, first of all, we're very glad that Special Advisor Goodale released the report today. It just shows Canada's commitment to get to the truth and hold Iran accountable. You know, we said from the get-go, when this tragedy happened, that we will seek accountability, justice, and reparation for the family. And this is part of that. Obviously, it's one step in a process. I spoke with the families, and I can tell you, Vashti, this was a very sober moment coming to the 1 year mark on January 8th. I spent 3 hours with the families reviewing where we are and explaining to them that this report, in my view, and I will take that and bring that to the international community, because one part of the report, we have Special Advisor Goodale put 21 group of questions, which are the true questions we need to ask, and we will be relentless in asking Iran to provide comprehensive response to these questions.
Do you think you'll get those responses, though, Minister, based on their behavior so far?
I will fight every step of the way. I mean, I think that our best allies in that is the international community. I mean, there's questions like, how can you leave an airspace open when you knew that there would be danger like that to civil aviation? And who are responsible? What was the chain of command? I mean, there's a number of questions there. And also in the report of Special Advisor Goodale, we're looking also forward, kind of saying never again with the Safer Skies initiative, making sure that not only we will fight for accountability, for justice, for transparency. We need to bring closure to these families that have been suffering, and every day is a day too much in that. I wish we could have already provided all these answers to the family, but what I'm committed to, and I recommitted to them with the Prime Minister and our government, is to be with them at every step of the way and fight for them, to be their voice and amplify their voice in front of the...
I take that point, and I've spoken to family members as well. When you say, though, that the government will fight with them, will be for them, will seek justice, tangibly, what does that mean? Will you ultimately, for example, be able to prescribe guilt to an individual in the Iranian government? And will you seek some sort of justice specifically against that individual?
So what we've done is kind of manifold. You know, when that started, I said we had 4 key milestones. One was to get consular access to make sure that following the tragedies, the families could go to Iran, those who wanted. The second one was the repatriation of remains, that this be done in accordance with the will of the family. Then there is the investigation, both the air safety investigation and the criminal investigation and the reparation. So on the air safety investigation, Iran, under Annex 13 of the Chicago Convention, needs to provide answers. I mean, we know what caused the crash. I mean, this is obvious. Missiles were fired.
Do you believe it was human error, as Iran claims?
No, I don't. And what I say is that we will get, and we have asked questions to understand what happened. So we will certainly be in a position now with our experts. Not only we have the Transport Safety Board, but we created a forensic team within the Government of Canada, which we announced with the Prime Minister, to make sure that we can gather all the necessary intelligence information to make our own assessment of what the findings that are going to come from that. And on the criminal side, obviously we don't have access to the witnesses or the evidence or the suspects. But certainly what we're going to do and what we're doing with the Ukrainian government is we have detached RCMP agents to gather as much evidence as possible to make sure that on the criminal side, we will do as much as we can to find those which would be responsible for this tragedy.
If you don't think it was a mistake, as Iran claims, do you think it was deliberate?
Well, we'll let the process unfold. What I say is that we saw missiles being fired at the airline, and that for me raised all sorts of questions. And when I met for the first time, I was probably one of the foreign ministers of Canada who had met with the Iranian foreign minister in years, I think, for that matter, when we met in Oman. And certainly at the time, I told him very clearly, I said, with admission of responsibility come great responsibilities. And one of them is transparency, is accountability, because now the world is watching. Once you have admitted responsibility, you have great responsibilities. And we're going to hold to that at every step of the way. And what we're doing, just in parallel to your question, on the reparation side, because we said that, and reparation is broader than compensation, maybe yes. Public apology, there's different things that could be done. But we are also working with the international community because from the day of the tragedy, I created the group you've seen, the International Coordination and Response Group, with Ukraine, with the United Kingdom, with Sweden and Afghanistan, because I realized at that time that the way to deal with Iran was to stay united and speak with one voice, to represent all the victims, to make sure that we would be able to seek the justice, the transparency, the accountability.
Getting that transparency, getting that accountability, though, does depend on Iran providing the answers to the questions that you've pointed out, that family members have pointed out, still remain. Do you trust Iran?
Well, we have a lot of reasons to be concerned, because what we've seen so far is that if you look at the so-called report that we saw,
yes.
and those were largely things that we already knew. What we want now is comprehensive responses to the legitimate questions that the families have. And that's what we committed to push at every step of the way. And I will continue to push. I will amplify their voice. I will be in their face all the time to say those are the legitimate questions. And that's why the report by Special Advisor Goodale was so helpful, because it crystallizes in one document our understanding of the events, provides a chronology, and sets a number of questions, and they'll also never again. So what the international community can do, because we obviously saw there's a gap. There's a gap. That's why I talked to the international...
But it's a huge gap, right?
Well, there's a gap in the convention. Imagine, now you have a military which shoots a civilian airliner, and under the current framework is supposed to investigate itself. I mean, clearly...
But that's why I ask if you trust Iran, right? And respectfully, you didn't answer whether or not you do. I'm not taking away from what your government is attempting to do, but...
I will question everything they say, because I take nothing at face value.
So you don't trust them?
No, because there's too many examples that we've seen where, they've not been forthcoming. So I will press for answers at every step of the way.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.